Goal of this project is to find a 500 carat topaz deposit, and though there are many places in Colorado where topaz can be found, we're going to zoom into the west rim of the igneous formation known as Pikes Peak batholith. It took me about a year to accomplish this goal, and this video documents the process. This is a longer video, so basic outline is part 1, recon, data collection on topaz occurrences. Part 2, back to the field to look for a fresh deposit of topaz. Part 3, we're gonna look at the minerals from the pocket to reconstruct a timeline of the formation of the pocket and basic geochemistry. And then part 4, finally, we're gonna look at a geologic map to understand how fractional crystallization governs where topaz occurs in an intrusive center known as the Redskin stock. Let's get to the field. Specific agenda for topaz. So the first step is locating where the float is. And we already have some here. Working my way up the mountain, winding back around, zigzagging all the way up. Sometimes there's not so much of a trail. You gotta make your own and just walk on the ladders. And the very first piece of smoky quartz, I was like, wow, that's got a little bit of smoky character. Flip it over, and we've got actual crystals forming in the area. I want to point out that this smoky does have topaz crystals embedded in its base, as well as on this face, signifying elevated concentrations of topaz in this portion of the Redskin stock, so it gets pinned. Good float. Man, looking good though. Continuing right up. First cavities observed on this whole way. My roll's getting bigger. Maybe that one. Notice a correlation between the ultra red pockets and the occurrence of topaz. So note that 2 of the 3 quartz crystals pulled from that watermelon-sized myroll do have topaz. This one, a fine druze on the front and 2 fragments on the back. This location gets a pin. Looking good to me, especially because there's topaz in the tailings. A few more, one on matrix and one in my mouth. I'll show you where this one came from. 2 here. And then the topaz came from right here. See little fragments. That's another piece of one at least. This stuff is soft. Always check the floor. Blue topaz. All right, things are getting a little more interesting. I'm pretty sure that's a piece of topaz, and it's blue as well. Where is she? Another piece of blue topaz. It sticks out like a sore thumb. And that completes the fieldwork and data collection portion of this project within the Redskin stock of the Tarryall Mountains. I will say that more data points were collected on topaz occurrences than that was shown in the video, though some of the most significant were shown. This project was completed over the spring and fall seasons of 2024. I covered about 70 kilometers or 44 miles to gather the data. And by no means is this the full extent of the Tarryalls, though it did produce enough data points to unravel regional patterns of where topaz was occurring more frequently. Interpretation of those regional patterns revealed that there's a particular zone within one geologic unit of the Redskin stock that is the most prolific for topaz occurrences. Let's hop back into that zone and look for a fresh topaz deposit. This is a spot that captures my attention for a place to prospect a pocket. Walking along this way, that's my route. I notice beneath this log, little pieces of quartz, and not only one, but several. Also some iron staining on it. That's a flat face. Then came around to this side, and good. That is awesome. And everything is right next to one another. So we've got a pocket here, and this looks like a big one. I'm just gonna start right here. Oh man, big piece of quartz with a lot of healed faces there. I went down to granite and no more pieces, so that was float, and we've got more up here, so I'm still too low. It's gonna be right up here beneath these dead trees. So I came up here and acknowledged that this granite is becoming pegmatitic right here. Started digging there. Soil is going red and there is a crystal. So we'll keep going right here. They're coming from beneath it. They're finally going down. And you can see that the depth, it began at surface level, then it was being found a little deeper. And the further up the hill we go, the deeper everything gets, which means it hasn't traveled far and we're getting close to where it came from. Well, let's see what this one is. Wow, it's a part of a quartz crystal. Yeah, where all the red is, all the crystals are clay. I think we're now in the pocket. Oh, hot dog. I had no idea. I was just beating on the back of that. 2.5 meters up the slope. We've arrived. Clay layer looking pretty geometric down here. Let's check the status. What even is that? Looks pretty broken, whatever it is. I'm hoping that everything is going to get better quality going deeper. Quality looking pretty good on at least some of them. And this one out of the bottom. Wow, that's a big old feldspar. Goodness. It's stuck in there. Good old megalodon tooth. That one right there in an upside down, so we probably got top of pocket right here, and that's why we gotta go slow. A few more, pretty dispersed, so I'm gonna come back with a shovel. And I'm just working in this clay zone, so pretty white over here, white over here. Pretty much the format of pulling from this pocket, prying up clay and breaking it up. It's a tabby fiesta. Oh, there goes the feldspar. From the ground, pointing up. Muscovite in the house. The last block, the quality will be better of the recording in the daytime. A new species. This one, to begin with, we have a fluorite crystal right here. And beside it, another new species. This is a topaz crystal. And that means going through all gravel removed from the pocket thus far to make sure no topaz was missed. Doing so with 2 different mesh sizes. Let's get back up the mountain. Good morning. Here's how it's going. I got most of the material classified, sorted, And I did find some outliers. Anything that looked weird, I put into this bin right here. We'll go through it. So almost finished, and we're almost to the point where we can begin digging again. Okay, this is the last basket before beginning digging. We're back to the original position, and I'll show you how it's been spotting things. That's a fluorite for sure, and that's likely a topaz crystal. All of that turned out to be scrap, some quartz pieces, fluorites, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 topaz. So it was time well spent. Let's get back into the pocket. Since there is a good amount of fluorite coming from this region right here, the strategy for today is to try to keep it together as much as possible. So I'm going to go in on the right side, remove all this dirt, push it down the flume, lightly sort it, and the stuff on the left is going to be classified, all of the dirt and clay clumps broken up and then sorted here. Okay, first in situ pieces of fluorite. We've got the muscovite biotite layer, and then this one was there. It is a fluorite, and it is green, but it's so coated in clay that it's hard to tell. And that's the name of this game, disguises. There's another piece of fluorite. The first in situ topaz came out of the wall right there. Let's give it a rinse. Etched termination. Best piece yet. That is an etched topaz. My goodness. Switched over to wooden tools. The fluorite, topaz, quartz, mica, and feldspar are all coming out together in this whole line right here. That is a fluorite crystal. This one's loose. Maybe the termination is behind it. Another topaz from right beside the other. So we'll just stay in this margin. That looks like quartz luster, but that looks like topaz luster. It's really fractured. That's the nature of the pocket. But let's check them out. That's actually fluorite. Number 1. That's a topaz crystal. So fractured. And all of this in the back is also topaz. Man, it's in so many pieces. Pretty sure this is the back of that quartz crystal or termination. Yep. All of this is topaz. Pretty complete, smoky. From the back, I set out for 500 carats, and this crystal puts us at 500 carats. So, coming back another day. New day. I wanted to check before reclaiming the hole if it produced any more topaz. And so far, there are just enough fragments to say that it definitely does. Going deeper, this is where it was left off before. And down at that level, we can see that there are forms ready to be pulled, and the pocket continues down. Topaz is more dense than the surrounding material, so we can bet that some has settled at the bottom, so saving that for another day. This was the beginning area, the flume, and upper section. That lip will collapse as soon as the ground thaws. Reclamation complete. My, these crystals had a history. These are cleaned up, and based on their characteristics, they give us enough information to interpret the formation conditions that generated this pocket. So let's take a moment to read these beautiful letters from the earth. Phase 1, formation of the pocket. As this volatile enriched magma steadily cooled, it formed microcline, the first generation of quartz, muscovite, and topaz. I think topaz is a part of the mix because some of the first generation quartz do have what appears to be topaz embedded within them. In order to form big quartz and feldspar crystals, our solution at this point has to be super saturated in silica, meanwhile moderately saturated in fluorine. Topaz is only 18% by weight fluorine, so we just need some. Too much would inhibit the growth of the quartz and feldspar. Second phase, the arrival of late-stage hydrothermal fluid associated with the cooling magma chamber, and this was likely to occur in pulses. The first pulse, based on these crystals, was saturated in silica, giving rise to this second generation of growth. Then we get a new pulse of hydrothermal solution, and this time it's of a different chemistry. The crystals tell us this because their second generations of growth are deeply etched and corroded. So we can infer that the chemistry of the solution this time is supersaturated in fluorine. This is where we precipitate the fluorite crystals, which are about 48% by weight fluorine. This also explains why we're getting muscovite books with fluorite growing in between the pages. I thought this was lepidolite at first, took it into the lab. We can see in cross-polarized light that it stays dark, which means this is an isotropic mineral. So light is passing through the crystal grains at the same speed regardless of the orientation. And we can also infer from this book that the muscovite came first, and then the hydrothermal solution saturated in fluorine was introduced into this pocket environment. And also another clue that this gives us is that the fluorite came later, because we had the formation of the muscovite, and then fluorite from this second pulse of hydrothermal fluid was deposited in between the layers. A hydrothermal solution enriched in fluorine is also capable of completely destroying feldspar. As was the case in this pocket, I think we only have one survivor, and this solution also gives rise to the etching pattern found on every crystal of topaz recovered from this pocket. The etching in these topaz crystals is this tooth-like pattern that appears on the tops and bottoms of the crystals, and it's selective. So solution can etch certain faces of a crystal more easily than others based on the bond energy. So certain faces have higher bond energy than others, and the ones with low bond energy are most susceptible to etching by way of solution. Now, I think that there's another process that's happening concurrently with the etching of the topaz. So we've got a fluorine-rich solution drop in the top on these topaz crystals. Meanwhile, fluorite crystals are growing, and as they grow, that's taking the fluorine out of the solution and putting it into solid form. It's being locked up in the crystals. So that solution progressively gets less saturated in fluorine. And eventually, conditions may be favorable for topaz to resume growth. And that may be the case with these etched crystals because, often you will see pits and irregular surfaces and a kind of a granular texture. But for these, we can see that the texture is very smooth. So that makes me believe that these resumed growth just to some degree, not enough to form a full termination back, but just enough to smooth out all the rough edges from the solution etching. What are these rainbow streamers running through the topaz crystals? I do not know, but I bet the answer is in here. Highly recommended reading for everything you could hope to know about topaz. This is information dense, high-level stuff, and some pages I'll get to the end of, and I don't even know what I read. But something that I did learn from the book is that you may have noticed that this topaz is bicolor. So blue and brown. This is caused by radiation-induced color centers. Color center is basically where the lattice gets distorted at the atomic level. The blue is stable. Meanwhile, the sherry color, it's metastable. So if exposed to sunlight or heat, this will go to clear color or blue. one or the other. It won't be anything in between. Now we've discussed the formation of the minerals, the formation of the pocket, and if you're still with me, let's take a step back and use a geologic map to understand the igneous formation that gave birth to this topaz pocket, the Redskin stock. But before we do, let's do a giveaway. Feeling pretty hype about the topaz crystals, so let's do a giveaway for everything that's not topaz. 2 giveaways, one for the fluorite, one for everything else. And I'm keeping these. I really like how messed up they are. They record everything that happened in this pocket. My giveaways are drawings, so no politics, no popularity contest. I will say that of the 2 winners, if one is overseas, then they will get the fluorite because it's less expensive for me to ship. The winner will be announced on the spring equinox. That's March 20th of 2025. It's in like a week. Rules of the giveaway. You have to answer this question in the comments of this video. Question is, what's causing the rainbow aurora lines in the topaz? There is no wrong answer. I don't even know what the answer is. So just post your best guess in the comments and you will be entered. 2 winners will be put in the description of this video on the equinox, and you'll have 1 week to email me your shipping address to send the crystals, or a new winner will be drawn. Let's get to the geologic maps. Now for a bit of background, this is the geologic map I use for this project. Let's get to the reference map. State of Colorado, this rectangle in the middle is the Bailey Quadrangle. That's what we're looking at here and here on the topographic map. The Tarryall Mountain range were the area of exploration for this project, so I backpacked around all throughout here, and the Kenosha's are the next range to the north. In the geologic map, all the pink is granite of Pikes Peak batholith, including this secondary late-stage intrusive center known as the Redskin stock. That's this circular area here. First off, I've had some people comment saying that I'm giving away too much information in some of my videos, and I think they make a good point. My intention is to inspire exploration and help other rockhounds develop their skills in the field. So rather than tell you which specific unit I found there to be the most topaz, I'm going to give you the context needed to build this experience yourself. First point of importance, let's distinguish these different colors, decide what they actually mean in real life, and discuss the shape of the Redskin stock. It's spherical, circular in 2 dimensions, but this is a magma bubble, so molten rock that cooled and condensed beneath the surface, and then all of this bubble was eroded away, and we're left with a cross-section of the Redskin stock. The different colors represent different facies or subvarieties of granite. So it's all granite, it's just subdivided because these can be distinguished from one another. What those actually look like, let's take a look at some examples collected from within the Redskin stock, beginning with the YGRP. That's the abbreviation for the Redskin porphyritic granite. Porphyry means you have larger crystals within a finer grain ground mass. On the next layer out, we have the YGRG. This is the Redskin equigranular granite, and we can see that these crystals are roughly equidimensional. So they're about the same size, and this is a medium grain, so not so coarse. And then moving out another layer, we get into the Pikes Peak granite, so YGP. And here we can see that we have very coarse grained crystals, and I would call this a sub-equigranular. Then in the very center, we have the YGRF. I don't have an example of this facies, but this is the fine-grained granite of the Redskin stock and represents the last portion of molten material to crystallize within this intrusion. Also, these geologic maps are great. They show a lot of detail, but don't take them for granted. There's more than what appears on these maps. These are 2 additional facies that I found within the Redskin stock, and they don't occur on this geologic map. Also, the yellow, I've learned to just ignore this. This stands for Quaternary colluvium. This is glacially deposited surface material from the last ice age. So just overlook it. It doesn't have anything to do with the igneous rocks in the subsurface that we're locating minerals in. Being able to recognize and identify the different facies of granite is helpful for understanding the geologic conditions that are most favorable to topaz formation. And in this project, I found that topaz was occurring in one of these facies more frequently than any other, and that's not without exclusion of this central core region right here. Geology is a universal language, so even though we're talking about the Redskin stock in Colorado, these same concepts are applicable anywhere in the world. And the reason why, what makes it so universal, is volatile behavior. So let's break that down a bit. It's like my favorite thing to talk about. So let's look at the mineral that we're seeking, topaz, which contains the element fluorine. Fluorine is a volatile element, which means it behaves different than the rest of the elements that form these rocks. And we need a way to concentrate it so much that it forms its own mineral, the topaz. And we do that through fractional crystallization, which describes the chemical evolution of a magma as it crystallizes through time. Fractional crystallization also gives rise to all these different facies, which represent different stages of crystallization as this magma body cools from the outside inward. An important property of volatile elements such as fluorine is that they behave similar to incompatible elements, which means they have low partition coefficients and prefer to be in the molten magma over the rock. So as this intrusion is crystallizing from the outside inward, the rock is forming and it's crystallizing quartz and feldspar and hornblende and biotite, but the fluorine doesn't want to have anything to do with that. That's the low partition coefficient and volatile behavior. So as it progressively crystallizes in towards the center, it becomes more enriched, this portion, in volatile elements. So with that in mind, wouldn't it make sense that if we walk to the dead center of this, that we'd find a big pocket of topaz? Yeah, it would stand to reason, but that's not the way it works because of a second property of volatiles. A volatile enriched melt, magma, is a low viscosity fluid. It's going to flow very easily, which means as this is crystallizing from the outside in, it's contracting and it's creating available space for low viscosity fluids to travel through. So this acts as a way for these to migrate outward. Where this volatile enriched fluid stops, I cannot say, because that would define exactly where to find the topaz. So I will leave you to hypothesize a reason for why it stops, and that will determine where you find the topaz and which facies of granite you find it in.